The doctor saw the millionaire's wife ultrasound and warned him to divorce. The husband's decision shocked all. The doctor's hands trembled as he held the ultrasound wand against Mrs. Blackwood's swollen belly. His face, usually composed and professional, drained of color as the image materialized on the screen. In his 30 years of practice, Dr. Marcus Chen had delivered thousands of babies, but what he saw now made his blood run cold. "Mrs. Blackwood," he said slowly, his voice barely above a whisper, "I need to speak with your husband immediately." Victoria Blackwood, radiant at 7 months pregnant, felt her heart skip. "Is something wrong with the baby?" The doctor's silence spoke volumes. He excused himself and returned moments later with Richard Blackwood, one of the city's most powerful real estate moguls. The millionaire's confident stride faltered when he saw the doctor's expression. "Mr. Blackwood, what I'm about to tell you may be the most difficult thing you'll ever hear." Dr. Chen closed the door behind them. "The ultrasound shows something that I believe you need to consider divorce. Immediately. Before we continue this shocking story, I want to know, where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments below, and if this story has already grabbed your attention, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. Richard Blackwood had built his empire from nothing. At 45, he commanded boardrooms and closed million-dollar deals before breakfast. But standing in that sterile medical office, watching his wife's confused face, he felt like a lost child. "Divorce," Richard's voice cracked. "What are you talking about?" Dr. Chen pulled up the ultrasound image on his computer screen. "Mr. Blackwood, I've discovered something during the scan that indicates—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "The baby your wife is carrying has a rare genetic marker, one that's impossible for you to have passed on." The room spun. Richard gripped the edge of the desk. "You're saying the baby isn't mine?" "I'm saying," Dr. Chen continued gravely, "that based on these genetic markers, this child's biological father is someone with a very specific hereditary trait, a trait that, according to your medical records, you don't possess." Victoria's face crumpled. "Richard, I can explain." "Furthermore," the doctor interrupted, his voice heavy with reluctance, "this particular genetic marker is associated with a hereditary condition that could pose serious risks to both mother and child. Whoever the biological father is, he's carrying something that could endanger your wife's life." The next words hung in the air like a death sentence. "If she continues this pregnancy without proper medical intervention, knowing the father's complete medical history, she could die during childbirth." Richard stood frozen, his world collapsing around him. His wife of 10 years, the woman he'd loved since college, had betrayed him. But worse than the betrayal was the danger she now faced. "Get out," he said quietly to Victoria. "Richard, please, get out." His roar shook the walls. Victoria fled the room in tears. Dr. Chen shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Blackwood, I understand this is devastating, but we need to discuss. How long have you known?" Richard's eyes were wild. "I discovered it during today's scan. The markers are unmistakable. I've run the analysis 3 times to be certain." Dr. Chen pulled up medical charts. "This genetic condition is extremely rare. Only 1 in a million people carry it. The fact that your wife is pregnant by someone with this marker means we need to identify the biological father immediately to understand the full scope of the medical risks." Richard sank into a chair, his head in his hands. His mind raced through the past months. Victoria's late nights at her charity events, her new personal trainer, the weekend business trips that seemed to multiply. How blind had he been? "What kind of risks are we talking about?" he asked finally. "The condition can cause severe complications during delivery, blood clotting disorders, organ failure, hemorrhaging. Without knowing the father's complete medical history and preparing accordingly, the mortality rate for mothers is nearly 40%. 40%. Richard felt sick. Despite everything, despite the betrayal that cut him to his core, he couldn't bear the thought of Victoria dying. "What do you recommend?" The words tasted like ash in his mouth. "Find out who the father is. Get his complete medical history. And yes, given the circumstances, I would understand if you chose to end your marriage. But Mr. Blackwood, the doctor leaned forward, your wife needs medical help, regardless of your personal decisions. Richard left the hospital in a daze. His driver, James, who'd been with the family for 15 years, noticed his employer's distress immediately. Home, sir? No. Richard's voice was hollow. Take me to the office. But he couldn't focus on work. Sitting in his corner office overlooking the city skyline, Richard stared at a photo on his desk. Him and Victoria on their wedding day. She'd been so beautiful, so full of life and laughter. They'd dreamed of children together, of building a family to match their empire. His phone buzzed. Victoria. He let it go to voicemail. Then another call, and another. Finally, a text. Richard, please, let me explain. It's not what you think. Not what he thought. She was carrying another man's child. A child that could kill her. What else could it possibly be? That evening, Richard found himself at his brother Michael's house. Michael, a successful lawyer, poured 2 generous glasses of whiskey. She cheated on you. Michael's face was a mask of fury. Victoria, I can't believe it. The doctor says I should divorce her immediately. Richard stared into his glass. Says the baby could kill her if we don't find the biological father. Then let her find him herself. This isn't your problem anymore, Rich. But it was. Despite everything, Richard couldn't turn off 10 years of love like a faucet. He thought of Victoria alone, scared, facing a potentially fatal pregnancy. His anger warred with his concern. What would you do? Richard asked. Michael was quiet for a long moment. I'd walk away. She made her choice. But Richard couldn't sleep that night. He lay in his empty bed. Victoria was staying at her sister's, staring at the ceiling. At 3 a.m., his phone rang. Victoria's sister, Patricia. Richard, I'm sorry to call so late, but Victoria's in the hospital. She collapsed. They're saying it's related to the pregnancy complications. She's asking for you. Richard was out the door before Patricia finished speaking. He found Victoria in a hospital bed, pale and fragile, hooked up to monitors. Her eyes filled with tears when she saw him. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. Who is he? Richard's voice was ice. Victoria closed her eyes. There is no he. Don't lie to me now, Victoria. Your life depends on finding him. I'm not lying. Tears streamed down her face. Richard, I never cheated on you. I swear on my mother's grave. The genetic markers... I know what the doctor said, but I'm telling you I've never been with another man. Not since the day we met. Richard wanted to believe her. God, how he wanted to believe her. But science didn't lie. Genetic markers didn't appear out of thin air. Dr. Chen appeared in the doorway. Mr. Blackwood, we need to run more tests. The complications are progressing faster than anticipated. Over the next 3 days, Richard barely left the hospital. Despite everything, he couldn't abandon Victoria. His lawyers called constantly, papers ready for him to sign, but he ignored them. His brother berated him for being weak. His business partners wondered why he'd cancelled all his meetings. But Richard was haunted by Victoria's insistence. She'd never been a good liar. Even surprise parties were beyond her capability, yet she maintained her innocence with a conviction that shook him. On the 4th day, Dr. Chen called Richard into his office with an expression of utter bewilderment. Mr. Blackwood, I need to apologize. We've discovered something extraordinary. Richard's heart pounded. What do you mean? We've run extensive genetic testing on your wife. The results are unprecedented. The doctor pulled up complex charts on his screen. Your wife has a condition called chimerism. It's extremely rare. She has 2 sets of DNA in her body. I don't understand. In the womb, she absorbed her twin. This means different parts of her body can have different genetic codes. The baby she's carrying, it's yours, Mr. Blackwood. But the genetic markers we detected came from her absorbed twin's DNA, which is present in her reproductive system. The room tilted. Richard gripped the chair. You're saying she never cheated? She never cheated. The baby is yours. But because of her chimerism, it's carrying genetic markers from her absorbed twin, markers that include the hereditary condition I warned you about. It's not from another man. It's from another version of your wife that never got to be born. Richard felt his knees buckle. The relief, the guilt, the shame. It all crashed over him at once. He'd been ready to divorce the love of his life over a medical anomaly so rare most doctors never see it. Is she still in danger? Yes, but now that we understand what we're dealing with, we can prepare. The risk is manageable with proper care. Richard ran from the office, taking the stairs 2 at a time to Victoria's room. He burst through the door to find her reading a baby name book, tears staining the pages. "Victoria, I know," she said quietly. "Dr. Chen told me about the chimerism." Richard crossed the room in 3 strides and fell to his knees beside her bed. "I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. I should have believed you. I should have trusted you." "You believed the science," Victoria said, touching his face gently. "Anyone would have. But I should have believed in us more." Tears ran down Richard's face, the first time he'd cried since his father's funeral. "I was ready to throw away everything we built together. I was so angry, so hurt, I couldn't see past it." "Richard, stop." Victoria lifted his chin. "We both suffered. This thing inside me, this condition I never knew I had, it nearly tore us apart. But we're still here. I told you to get out. I screamed at you. How can you forgive me?" "Because I love you," Victoria said simply, "and because I understand. If the situation were reversed, if I thought you'd betrayed me and put our child at risk, I don't know if I would have handled it any better." Richard pressed his face into her hand. "I don't deserve you." "Yes, you do. We deserve each other. We deserve this family we're building." Dr. Chen knocked and entered. "I hate to interrupt, but we need to discuss the birth plan. Now that we know about the chimerism and the associated risks, we need to take special precautions." Over the next 2 months, Richard transformed. The ruthless businessman who'd built an empire became the most devoted husband anyone had ever seen. He attended every doctor's appointment, read every medical journal about chimerism, and consulted with specialists around the world. He also did something else. He became an advocate. Using his wealth and influence, Richard established a foundation for genetic research, specifically focusing on rare conditions like chimerism that could destroy families through misunderstanding. "How many other couples have been torn apart by this?" he asked Victoria one evening as they prepared the nursery. "How many marriages ended because of genetic mysteries that no one understood?" Victoria, now 8.5 months pregnant, smiled at her husband. "That's why what you're doing matters. Our pain can help others." The day of delivery arrived with spring rain pattering against the hospital windows. Richard held Victoria's hand as Dr. Chen and a team of specialists prepared for the complex birth. The risks were real. The chimerism had created complications that required careful navigation. "I'm scared," Victoria admitted, as contractions intensified. "I'm here," Richard promised. "I'm not going anywhere. Ever again." The delivery was long and difficult. Twice Victoria's vitals dropped dangerously. Richard never let go of her hand, whispering words of love and encouragement, praying to any deity that would listen. And then, after 14 hours of labor, a cry pierced the air. Their daughter, perfect, healthy, and screaming with impressive lung capacity. "She's beautiful," Richard sobbed as the nurse placed the baby on Victoria's chest. "Just like her mother." "She has your stubborn chin," Victoria laughed through her own tears. Dr. Chen smiled at the family. "Congratulations. You've been through hell, but you made it through together." Later, as Victoria slept with the baby in the hospital bassinet beside her, Richard sat in the darkness, keeping watch. His phone buzzed with messages. Congratulations from friends, business associates, even his brother Michael, who'd admitted he was wrong to counsel divorce. But Richard ignored them all. He was too busy marveling at the 2 miracles in front of him. His wife, who'd carried a genetic mystery that nearly destroyed them, and his daughter, who existed because love proved stronger than doubt. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Dr. Chen entered quietly. "I wanted to check on everyone," the doctor said, "and to apologize again for the way I delivered the initial news. I should have investigated more thoroughly before suggesting such a drastic course." Richard shook his head. "You did what you thought was right with the information you had. We all did. Still, this case has taught me something valuable about jumping to conclusions, even with scientific evidence." Dr. Chen looked at the sleeping baby. "She's lucky to have parents who fought through such adversity." "We're the lucky ones," Richard said. "This whole experience, it could have destroyed us. Instead, it made us stronger." The doctor smiled. "That's a choice you both made. When faced with the worst possible scenario, you chose love over anger eventually. That's not science, Mr. Blackwood, that's character." After the doctor left, Richard penned a letter to his daughter to be opened on her 18th birthday. "My darling girl, by the time you read this, you'll be a young woman ready to make your own way in the world. I want you to know the story of how you came to be, not just the biology of it, but the love that survived the greatest test imaginable. Your mother carries within her the genetic echo of a twin who never got to live. That echo nearly cost us everything, our marriage, our family, our future. But it also taught us that love isn't just a feeling. It's a choice we make every day, especially on the days when everything seems lost. You exist because we chose to fight through the darkness, because your mother had the strength to maintain her truth even when science seemed against her. Because I learned that trust is more powerful than proof. You carry within you not just our DNA, but the legacy of a love that refused to die. Never forget that you are wanted, cherished, and born from a miracle greater than any genetic anomaly, the miracle of forgiveness and faith. All my love, Dad." 6 months later, at their daughter's baptism, Richard stood before their gathered friends and family. The same people who'd witnessed their near destruction now celebrated their renewal. "Many of you know what Victoria and I went through," Richard began, his voice strong. "A medical mystery nearly ended our marriage. I was ready to walk away from the best thing in my life because I couldn't see past my own hurt and confusion." He looked at Victoria, who smiled through tears, their daughter peaceful in her arms. "But I learned something vital. Sometimes the most impossible explanation is the true one. Sometimes science can be right and wrong at the same time. And sometimes the only thing that matters is choosing to believe in love, even when every logical thought tells you not to." The foundation Richard established grew rapidly. Within a year, it had funded research that identified 17 other cases of chimerism-related paternity confusion. 17 marriages saved, 17 families preserved. Victoria became a counselor for women with rare genetic conditions, using her experience to guide others through the confusion and fear. Together, they turned their nightmare into a beacon of hope for others. Their daughter, Emily, grew strong and healthy, carrying within her the genetic complexity that had nearly prevented her existence. Richard often watched her sleep, marveling at how close they'd come to losing everything. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you'd signed those divorce papers?" Victoria asked one evening, as they watched Emily take her first steps. "Every day," Richard admitted. "It haunts me. How close I came to giving up on us." "But you didn't," Victoria reminded him. "When it mattered most, you stayed." "You never stopped fighting for us," Richard countered. "Even when I'd given up, you held on to the truth." They were quiet for a moment, watching their daughter explore her world with fearless curiosity. "She's going to do great things," Victoria said. "She already has," Richard replied. "She brought us back together." As Emily grew, she inherited her father's business acumen and her mother's compassion. But more than that, she inherited the story of her birth, a tale of how love conquered the impossible, how science and faith could coexist, and how sometimes the most extraordinary explanations are the real ones. The Blackwood family became symbols of resilience in their community. Their story, once a source of near destruction, became a testament to the power of trust rebuilt from ashes. Richard often spoke at medical conferences, sharing their experience with doctors and genetic counselors, urging them to consider all possibilities before making life-altering pronouncements. "The day Dr. Chen told me to divorce my wife was the darkest of my life, he would say. But it was also the beginning of our greatest journey. We learned that medical mysteries can hide in the most unexpected places, and that love requires not just passion, but patience and faith. On Emily's 5th birthday, as friends and family gathered in their backyard, Dr. Chen arrived with a special gift. He'd become like family over the years, a constant reminder of how their worst moment had transformed into their greatest blessing. "I have something for you," he told Richard and Victoria, pulling out a medical journal. "Your case has been published. It's already helping doctors worldwide identify and properly diagnose chimerism. You've changed the field of genetic medicine." Victoria hugged the doctor. "You changed our lives first. Without your persistence in finding the truth, we might never have discovered what was really happening." "I almost destroyed your family with my initial diagnosis," Dr. Chen said, still carrying guilt from that day. "No," Richard said firmly. "You saved us, just not in the way any of us expected." As the party continued, Richard found himself standing apart, watching his family. Victoria was helping Emily blow out her candles, both of them laughing as the little girl got more excited about the smoke than the cake. His brother Michael was there too, playing with his own children, the man who'd once counseled divorce, now one of their strongest supporters. Patricia, Victoria's sister, approached him. "Penny, for your thoughts." "Just remembering," Richard said. "That night you called me, told me Victoria was in the hospital. I was so angry, but I came anyway. What made you call me?" Patricia smiled. "Because I knew my sister. In 27 years, I'd never seen her lie about anything important. When she swore she hadn't cheated, I believed her. I knew if you just stayed close enough, the truth would come out." "Thank you," Richard said, meaning it deeply, "for believing when I couldn't." "That's what family does," Patricia said simply. As Emily opened her presents, she pulled out a special one from her parents, a child's book about genetics, written specifically about chimerism. Victoria had authored it herself, with beautiful illustrations, showing how sometimes people carry hidden parts of themselves, like secret gardens waiting to bloom. "Mommy, is this about me?" Emily asked, already too perceptive for her age. "It's about all of us, sweetheart," Victoria said, "about how we're all more complex and wonderful than we might appear." "Like puzzles?" "Exactly like puzzles." That night, after the guests had gone and Emily was asleep, Richard and Victoria sat on their porch, the same porch where they'd once planned their future as newlyweds. The swing creaked gently as they rocked, comfortable in the silence that comes from years of hard-won understanding. "I've been thinking about having another child," Victoria said suddenly. Richard turned to her, surprised. "Really? After everything we went through?" "Because of everything we went through," she corrected, "we know the risks now, we can prepare, and Emily deserves a sibling." "The chimerism makes it complicated, not impossible. Dr. Chen says with proper monitoring from the start, we can manage any complications." Richard pulled her closer. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure that our family was forged in fire. We can handle anything now." 9 months later, they welcomed their son, Thomas, into the world. The delivery was smooth, prepared for with all the knowledge they'd gained from Emily's birth. As Richard held his son for the first time, he thought about the journey that had brought them here. The foundation had grown into an international organization. They'd funded research that identified new genetic conditions, saved countless marriages from misunderstanding, and provided support for families dealing with rare genetic mysteries. What had started as their personal nightmare had become a global force for good. Emily, now 6, was fascinated by her baby brother. "Does he have the special genetics too?" she asked, already understanding more than most children her age about DNA and heredity. "We all have special genetics," Victoria told her. "Every person is unique in ways we might not even know yet." "Like hidden treasures?" "Exactly like hidden treasures." As the years passed, the Blackwood family became renowned not for Richard's business empire, but for their contributions to genetic research and family counseling. They opened clinics that provided free genetic testing for couples experiencing unexplained fertility or paternity issues. They funded scholarships for medical students interested in genetic research. But more than that, they became living proof that love could survive the impossible. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Richard surprised Victoria with a vow renewal ceremony. Standing in the same church where they'd first promised to love each other for better or worse, they spoke new vows, informed by the trials they'd survived. "Victoria," Richard said, his voice steady but emotional, 20 years ago, I promised to love you in sickness and health. I had no idea that promise would be tested by something hidden in your very DNA. But I stand here today, more in love with you than ever, because you taught me that truth is sometimes stranger than fiction, and love is always stronger than doubt." Victoria, radiant in a simple white dress, smiled through her tears. "Richard, you came back to me when everything said you should walk away. You chose to believe in us when science itself seemed against us. You turned our greatest trial into our greatest triumph. I promise to continue building our life together. Complex genetics and all." Emily, now 13 and tall like her father, stood as maid of honor. Thomas, 7 and already showing his mother's compassionate nature, carried the rings. Dr. Chen officiated, having gotten ordained specifically for this moment. "This couple," Dr. Chen said to the gathered crowd, "taught me that medicine is as much about faith as it is about facts. They showed me that the human heart can find truth even when the mind is confused. Their love story began with a devastating diagnosis and transformed into a beacon of hope for families worldwide." As they exchanged rings again, Richard whispered to Victoria, "Thank you for never giving up." "Thank you for coming back," she whispered back. The reception was filled with families they'd helped over the years. Couples who'd been on the brink of divorce due to genetic mysteries, now celebrating with children they'd almost lost the chance to raise together. Doctors who'd changed their approach to delivering difficult news. Researchers who'd made breakthroughs inspired by the Blackwood case. Michael, Richard's brother, gave a toast that brought the room to tears. "I once told my brother to walk away, to choose anger over understanding. I've never been more wrong about anything in my life. Richard and Victoria didn't just save their marriage, they saved mine too. Watching them fight for each other taught me to fight for my own family when things got hard. They showed us all that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice we make every day." As the evening wound down, Richard found himself in the garden with Dr. Chen, watching the stars appear in the darkening sky. "Do you ever regret how it all started?" Richard asked. "The pain we went through?" Dr. Chen considered this. "Pain is often the price of profound growth. Your pain became purpose. How can anyone regret that? I just wonder sometimes, if we'd known from the beginning about the chimerism, would we be here now? Would we have built all this?" "Perhaps not," Dr. Chen admitted. "Sometimes we need to be broken before we can become whole in a new way. Your breaking led to thousands of families being healed. That's not coincidence, Richard. That's destiny." Inside, Victoria was dancing with Thomas, while Emily chatted animatedly with young medical students about her plans to become a genetic counselor. Richard watched his family through the window, his heart full. His phone buzzed with a message from a couple in Japan whose marriage had been saved by the Blackwood Foundation's work. They'd just welcomed their first child after discovering the wife had a similar genetic condition to Victoria's. The message was in broken English, but clear in its gratitude. "You gave us hope when doctor said divorce. Now we have beautiful daughter. Thank you for showing love is stronger than science confusion." Richard smiled, pocketing his phone. These messages came daily now, from around the world. Each one a reminder that their pain had purpose. Victoria appeared beside him, slipping her hand into his. "What are you thinking about?" "That doctor's appointment, 7 months pregnant. The way my world ended and began in the same moment." "Mine too," Victoria said softly. "I thought I'd lost you forever that day." "You never lost me. I just got lost for a while." Richard pulled her close. "But you were my lighthouse, even when I couldn't see the shore." "We were each other's lighthouse," Victoria corrected. "That's what marriage is, taking turns being the light when the other is lost in darkness." Emily joined them, now taller than her mother, brilliant and kind in equal measure. "Dad, there's a reporter here from Medical News. They want to interview you about the Foundation's new research grant." Richard looked at his daughter, seeing in her the perfect blend of Victoria's grace and his own determination, plus something uniquely her own, a fierce compassion born from knowing her very existence had once hung in the balance. "What do you think, Em? Should I talk to them?" Emily grinned. "Always, Dad. Every story we tell helps someone else hold on when things seem impossible." As Richard went to speak with the reporter, he thought about the man he'd been 20 years ago. Successful, confident, but ultimately untested. That man would have signed divorce papers and walked away, choosing pride over patience. But that man had never held his daughter, never seen his son's first steps, never watched his wife transform trauma into triumph. The interview was brief but powerful. Richard spoke about the importance of funding genetic research, about the need for compassion in medical diagnosis, about the power of choosing love over fear, but mostly he spoke about Victoria, the woman whose hidden genetic complexity had nearly destroyed them and ultimately saved them. "My wife is a miracle," he said simply, "not because of her chimerism, but because she never stopped believing in us, even when I did. She taught me that the most extraordinary love stories aren't the ones without challenges. They're the ones that transform challenges into purpose." Later that night, as they lay in bed in the quiet darkness, Victoria traced patterns on Richard's chest, a habit from their early marriage that had returned stronger after their trials. "Do you think Emily will understand?" she asked. "When she's older, when she faces her own challenges? Will she know that being born from complexity is a gift?" "She already knows," Richard assured her. "She sees it every day in how we love each other, in how we've turned our story into hope for others. She knows she was worth fighting for." "We all were," Victoria said. "Worth fighting for, I mean." "And worth believing in," Richard added, "even when belief seemed impossible." They fell asleep as they had for 20 years, intertwined and inseparable, living proof that love could conquer even the most impossible odds. Outside their window, the stars shone bright, each one a distant sun warming worlds they'd never see, much like their story, warming hearts they'd never meet, giving hope to families they'd never know. The Blackwood Foundation's latest report showed they'd helped identify and properly diagnose over 3,000 cases of chimerism and related genetic conditions. 3,000 families saved from the misunderstanding that had nearly destroyed Richard and Victoria. 3,000 stories of love triumphing over confusion, but numbers could never capture the real impact. It lived in the couple in Mumbai who named their daughter Victoria after learning her story. It lived in the medical student in Berlin who changed his specialty to genetic counseling after hearing Richard speak. It lived in the marriage counselor in Sydney who kept the Blackwood's story on her desk as a reminder that sometimes the impossible explanation is the true one. Most of all, it lived in Emily and Thomas Blackwood, two children who existed because their parents chose love over logic, faith over fear, and trust over the seemingly irrefutable evidence of betrayal. As dawn broke over their home, painting the sky in shades of hope, the Blackwood family slept peacefully. They'd walked through fire and emerged not just unburned, but forged into something stronger and more beautiful than they'd ever imagined possible. Their story, which began with a doctor's devastating diagnosis and a husband's shattering doubt, had become a legend of love's triumph over the impossible. And somewhere in the world, another couple facing their own genetic mystery would hear about the Blackwoods and find the strength to hold on just a little longer, to look just a little deeper, to choose love just one more time. Because that's what the Blackwoods taught the world, that love isn't just about the easy moments. It's about choosing each other when everything says you shouldn't. It's about believing in the impossible. It's about understanding that sometimes the most complex puzzles have the most beautiful solutions. And in the end, isn't that the greatest love story of all? Not the one without challenges, but the one that transforms challenges into miracles, pain into purpose, and doubt into unshakable faith. The doctor had warned Richard to divorce. Instead, he chose to discover. And in that choice, a family was saved, a foundation was born, and thousands of lives were changed forever. Love, it turns out, really is stronger than science, not because it denies science, but because it has the patience to wait for science to catch up to what the heart already knows. Thank you for joining me on this emotional journey. If this story touched your heart, moved you, or reminded you of the power of love and trust in your own life, please take a moment to subscribe to hear more powerful stories like this one. And remember, sometimes the most impossible explanation is the true one, and love is always worth fighting for.